So my name's Lauren. I'm the proud owner of Glow Baby Play Centre, and I have got a bit of a history and a bit of a backstory as to why I came around to open Glow Baby. So I'd love to talk to you about that today. I've got a son who is now 6 years old. His name's Hunter, and I had him back in 2019, and we realised quite early on that he wasn't hitting some of the visual milestones. He wasn't making eye contact. That was the one thing that I noticed, and probably a lot of people can relate to that. It's that sort of eye contact from an early age. I remember he was my first child, so I didn't really think much of it until I started going to other baby groups. I loved to go to baby groups and like the sensory play aspect that was involved with it. But I would look around and the babies were like looking directly at their parents. And I remember looking at Hunter and thinking he was just kind of fleeting across the room. And he had a bit of a wobble with his eyes as well. And his eyes would kind of ping a little bit from side to side. And I kind of started to question things, and I was just a bit like, oh, what could be going on here? Obviously, you don't like to think the worst, but we started to kind of look into different things, and we started to do a little bit of research, and we started to ask the questions with like the health visitors that were coming around. The health visitors, they did kind of shoo it away a little bit. They kind of said, oh, give it a bit of time, as often we do get told as parents, just, give it a few weeks and see how it progresses. But nothing seemed to be improving. And in fact, it was becoming a lot more clear that he wasn't making that eye contact. But admittedly, visual issues was actually, it sounds crazy looking back, but visual issues was actually not something that I thought it would be. Like, I was looking into things like autism, because sometimes if you have autism, you might not make eye contact. So I was looking into different things like that. And then I finally, I had a wonderful, wonderful health visitor, a couple of them, and they were so helpful. I went to one of the clinics. I don't actually know if they do the clinics anymore, like the weigh-in clinics that you would go to at we've got family hubs in East Sussex. So you would go along, baby would be weighed, you would chat to a health visitor if you've got any, questions or issues or anything. And that's when I sat down with this health visitor, and she said, I think that you're looking at a life-limiting illness. That was like the first thing that was like said to me with regards to kind of like looking at, what this could be and what was actually happening with Hunter. So I think we were actually kind of like they told us to go to A&E so that we could just be seen straight away. The health visitor kind of sent us over to our local hospital, and we went over and we had lots of different tests. And I remember kind of the doctors coming in, and they would hold up the toys from side to side just to see if he was tracking. And obviously, as I say, this was a little bit further in, so we had done all of this to try and see whether it was happening, and it just wasn't. And you could tell that there was a bit of an atmosphere in the rooms when the doctors would come in, and they would kind of, chat to their colleagues, and they would kind of leave, and it was all a bit of we just didn't really know what was going on. And then we had some scans booked in and things. We then were booked in with the ophthalmologist. And at about 3 months old, we were finally told that Hunter was visually impaired. We were told that his optic nerve was underdeveloped. And we were referred to Great Ormond Street Hospital to get some electrodiagnostic testing, just to see kind of the capacity of what his vision actually was. So at that kind of stage, we were looking at, we were told from the electrodiagnostic results, it was going to be very coarse vision, which meant not very much vision. And we were told to kind of expect that he would understand maybe the contrast between light and dark, and that would be it. So like shadows, against something really bright, if there was like an object in front, he might be able to make that out. So that was kind of what we was looking at, and kind of, the world comes crashing down at that point, because you're just a bit like, oh, where do we go from here? We were put in touch with like our sensory needs team. They came over, and we had lots of help and lots of, visits from people, visual stimulation, lots of different appointments, and it was all a bit crazy. I really started to develop a passion for sensory play during this period, because at this point I kind of didn't think that he was seeing the world like we would see. So I started to think, okay, what can I use to make him understand the world around us? Like, can we use different sounds? Can we use different textures, different things to feel? So I really started to grow on that. And my singing voice was one of the things that would always comfort Hunter. He was very auditory. Is that the right word? Auditory.
Yeah,
He would, yeah, he would really, really fixate on like if I was to sing a lullaby. And that was something I remember because my second child, Parker, he absolutely hates my singing voice and he just will not listen to me sing. But I remember going to baby groups, local baby groups, and really, really loving sensory play and just how Hunter would see the world in different ways. He couldn't see the world with his eyes, but he could feel the world, he could hear the world. And that was like pretty magic. So that's kind of where my love of sensory play stemmed from. Hunter had a bit of a unique journey because his vision actually did develop a little bit more than what we thought it was going to, which was, as you can imagine, like a bit of a miracle. It was like crazy. We would go to these appointments, these regular appointments, and each time they would say like, oh, like he's seeing more each time. So as kind of he got a little bit older, you know, between like 6 to 9 months, maybe up to a year, we were kind of looking at something called delayed visual maturation. So they were saying that his vision just didn't develop until a little bit later on. He still clearly had nystagmus. He was diagnosed with nystagmus. So we think it was kind of the distance vision that he would struggle with a little bit because it obviously it's not easy to focus when you've got nystagmus. So it was kind of like crazy. We kind of went from this world of being diagnosed as we were told he was blind to kind of, you know, visually impaired, but seeing the world a little bit. So it was a real journey throughout that first sort of year. And I started to volunteer at my local children's centre. Oh, sorry, my battery just went there. Started to volunteer at the local children's centre, running sessions for children with additional needs. I did a bit of a volunteer course and did some safeguarding training because I just felt like I didn't really know where to look for support with like those additional needs. And my parenting journey just felt so different to everyone else's. So I started to kind of like dive in and like, you know, what can I do to maybe like build a community around me? So I volunteered with a lovely lady at my local family hub called Leslie, did a lot of training. I did some training through COVID as well with her, and we facilitated some groups for children with additional needs. And that kind of is where the group started getting up and running. And kind of fast forward a couple of years, when Hunter was a toddler, we were playing dress up in the house and he dressed up as a pirate and put an eye patch on. And he suddenly said to me, "Mummy, it's gone black." And we just didn't really know what to respond. I just kind of remember like, oh my goodness. And I started like using his eye patch to like test his vision. And then it all of a sudden became apparent that this whole time he had monocular vision, and we now know he had absolutely no light perception in one of his eyes. He literally can't see anything from one of his eyes. And the other eye, he sees quite well with that eye. Obviously he's got the nystagmus and he still has his struggles, but yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. That was literally, we didn't even know that until 3, and we found out that was actually quite what's the word I'm looking for? That was quite like a regular thing that would happen. Like you wouldn't know if you were like monocularly sighted until you were a little bit older, because it's all that you've ever known or seen. So yeah, we kind of went on that journey then of kind of figuring out that he could actually only see through one eye, and that kind of flipped things upside down again. But all throughout that, I've kind of had that love for like sensory play and, you know, like playing with him in different ways. And it was a real journey from then till now. When I was pregnant with Parker, he's my youngest son. I was running sensory groups sort of weekly, like just like renting like local spaces, and people would come and I would bring Hunter with me, and he was really like the starting point for the whole thing. But because I was like unpacking all of this equipment, because it was really, light therapy was really like my bag, like the stuff that I loved, like, you know, the glow in the dark baby classes. It was just so much fun, and I just saw that Hunter gained so much from it. But I started to like fundraise and get like lots of equipment, and it was actually becoming really difficult to transport it to each of my different venues. So I decided that I was going to start to look for a permanent home. Sadly, my father actually passed away when I was pregnant with Parker, but he was kind of coming into his sort of pension era, and he was very clear that he wanted me to do something with Glow Baby with that. So when he passed, I had this sort of amount of money that I just knew that that was what I needed to do. So I set up my first play centre, which was in Hastings. Um, and I had lots of different playrooms, and I had a sensory room. I ran glow in the dark classes, and kind of, yeah, it just went from there. And we've just recently moved to our new venue over in Bexhill at a beautiful sort of campsite. It's a beautiful piece of land called Chestnut Meadow. And yeah, now we're kind of running here and kind of carrying on the dream. Hunter's now at school. Parker still comes with me to classes. And yeah, that's pretty much the journey.